So right before I saw the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, I had it described to me by someone who had already seen it as a mental flashbang and simultaneously a 1 out of 10 and a 10 out of 10. And after seeing it, I can basically affirm both of those statements to be completely true. This movie was a wild ride. At one point, I had myself feeling like high, basically questioning what I was even watching because it was so crazy and ridiculous. But ultimately, at the end of it, I'm not upset that I, spent money to get tickets to go see it. I'm not upset about the movie itself and its quality. Like, I think they did the best they could given the source material, and I'll get into that more a little later. But first of all, a little history lesson, okay? So I remember when Five Nights at Freddy's came out like 10 years ago. I believe it was 2014 when it came out. I think I was 12 years old. And for those who weren't like, I don't know, above the age of like 5 or whatever when this came out, who like can't remember, it was a crazy phenomenon. These games were massive. Every single person I knew, whether they liked it or not, knew what Five Nights at Freddy's was. I still have vivid memories of my first time playing the game. I have vivid memories of watching, the first 10 or 20 MatPat videos about it, where he would go over all the theories and such. I have vivid memories of watching Markiplier's first Let's Play on it before I was really into Markiplier at all. I remember watching his Let's Play when he was screaming, ah! He did that kind of thing.
Oh god! What the f***, okay?
So I have vivid memories of this time period. It's a time period I look back on fondly. And I remember because I was in middle school at the time, Five Nights at Freddy's was like seen as legitimately kind of a creepy, scary thing, right? Obviously, now that I'm an adult looking back, it's, it's a little corny, but at the time it was like, whoa, this is Five Nights at Freddy's. This is the dopest thing of all time, okay? This is scary. Ooh, it's like based on like a children's property like Chuck E. Cheese, but it's like creepy, so it's cool. It kind of played into like the creepy pasta trope at the time, that stuff like Squidward side, or what's the Disneyland one, like Treasure Island or Lost at Disney or something. Basically just the idea of like taking a children's property that has positive associations and putting like a negative, creepy, murderous, violent spin on it, right? And that was a big trend at the time with even video game creepypastas like Sonic EXE or Ben Drowned. And so, Five Nights at Freddy's, while it's not a creepypasta in and of itself, it kind of fit into that mold, and I think that's part of why it worked so well at the time, especially for like internet type people, right? People loved the idea at that time and still do. I mean, clearly considering how well this movie is doing, of a movie or a property or just, a story about something that was friendly for kids being like twisted in some weird way. And while I did like FNAF a lot back in the day, I remember the first, 3 games playing them was pretty fun. I never would have expected that it would carry on to this day. I thought it was going to be like kind of fad, like Bendy and the Ink Machine or Cuphead or whatever else, all those indie games from, pre-2020 basically that had their big heyday and then kind of died down in popularity. I thought it was going to be like there was a short amount of time when it's liked. Maybe the first 3 or 4 games would be really well respected and liked, and then eventually it would die down. YouTubers would stop talking about it, but that is not the case. To this day, people love Five Nights at Freddy's. I mean, even outside of people like Markiplier, who personally, springboarded a lot of their career based on Five Nights at Freddy's, or obviously Game Theory, who springboarded his career. For some reason, this series just keeps pushing on and keeps going. People absolutely love it. I mean, even 12 days ago, MatPat released a video about Five Nights at Freddy's. If you look up Game Theory FNAF, you can find playlists of 72 different videos by Game Theory from MatPat about Five Nights at Freddy's, which is crazy. I never would have expected that this series would have this much longevity. And even now, like, there are like, younger kids getting into Five Nights at Freddy's, the newer generations enjoying it. I've been somewhat put off by it due to the furry fandom kind of co-opting FNAF a little bit, and the fact that like, it's a mildly interesting property. It's a mildly interesting game series, but I've never been like that into it. I haven't been into the lore since I was like, 13, 14 years old. So I just don't really care that much anymore. But if there's a movie, I like movies, I want to see movies, and hey, it involves something from my childhood that I enjoyed that is going to the big screen. And also, it's like an independent, game that's getting a major release in theaters from a movie. That seemed pretty cool to me. I'm going to go see it. The theater experience alone was pretty interesting. There were a ton of people there. The theater was absolutely packed with people from, I would say, probably ages of like 16 to 3 or something in that range. There were a ton of people there. There were people there in costumes, cosplaying. I remember when I was sitting down at my seat, I was like on like one side of the movie theater, on like the far left side. I was like the last seat. There was one other seat next to me, and then there was the aisle, and a group of people came up and they were all dressed up like the characters. One of them had like a giant bunny head on, and I remember audibly saying holy shit without even realizing it. It was kind of loud in the theater, so hopefully he didn't hear me say that. I don't want to, I'm not trying to punk someone. I'm not trying to on him. You know what? He wants to wear the bunny head to the FNAF movie premiere. Good for him. Hope it makes him happy. But there was a lot of hype around this movie online. There was a lot of hype even in person. And so overall, I was excited to see it go down. And after seeing the movie, I can basically say that it was good. I don't know that it was a good movie. I think that as a movie, it probably like is not going to be viewed favorably among critics who aren't into Five Nights at Freddy's because like they don't care for the property. And also like just like the story and everything, there are some big plot inconsistencies that don't make sense. Like as a movie, does it really work that well? Probably not. Some of the acting, like the main actor was good. Josh Hutcherson, who I know as PETA from the Hunger Games, he did a pretty good job. The rest of the cast, I thought their acting was a little corny, but it probably is going to have to be in a script like this, right? That's about animatronics haunted by ghosts for a horror game that's intended to scare like 10-year-old boys, right? Like obviously there's going to be some degree of cheesiness and corniness there, but I think that given everything they had to work with as far as the story itself, I think they did a pretty decent job of making a movie that at the very least will probably please fans of the series. So with that out of the way, we're going to get into the spoilers section of the review. I'll just talk about basically what the movie's about. This will probably be the most rambly, disorganized part of the video because I saw the movie about 24 hours ago. Well, less than 24 hours ago. I saw it last night. I don't have everything on the top of my head, but I'll try to recount the plot the best I can. So the main character in this movie is this guy called Mike, once again played by Josh Hutcherson, or I think PETA Malark of Hunger Games fame, who, how even old is this guy right now? Okay, he's 31 years old, still somehow playing someone who's like 21, but you know what? He pulled it off. I mean, he looked like 21 in the movie. But the movie is basically about him and his little sister who he has to take care of due to a family tragedy earlier in his life where his younger brother was abducted by an unknown man. He's very distraught. His family fell apart. His parents, I believe, both died. And so it's him taking care of his little sister, trying to make his way in the world. And he's down on his luck. In the beginning of the movie, he beats the out of someone who he thinks is abducting a child, but it's actually just that child's father who he beats up inside of a mall at a fountain, which is pretty funny. That's a pretty dope scene in the movie. I did enjoy that quite a bit. Overall, he's just having a tough time in life. He needs to make some money, and meanwhile, his aunt is trying to basically get this child into her custody rather than his own. So he's kind of down on his luck. He needs some kind of direction in life. He needs a job primarily, and so the job he ends up taking is at Freddy's Pizzeria, and he gets this job because he goes to basically this like I don't know what he is, like a career counselor or something like that. This career counselor is played by Matthew Lillard, who you guys have probably seen in a few different movies before. I think he plays Shaggy in Scooby-Doo, which is kind of funny to think about, but basically he ends up playing the main villain in the movie. Big spoiler, but he gets Mike the job, and then later on he is Springtrap or William Afton basically. And from what I remember about the plot of the games, this mostly does follow that as far as, Mike is a security guard. He has to look at the cameras. The animatronics are possessed by the ghosts of dead children, but obviously because this is a movie that has a narrative, they have to amend parts of the story to better reflect like a story to make it a watchable movie. And the way they did that is with a few characters, one of which is this female cop who is like the daughter of William Afton, who we don't know this in the beginning of the movie, but she's like the blonde, pretty female cop or whatever, which you see every day on the street, okay, dealing with crime, fighting crime, and she is like a willing accomplice basically in the story. I don't even know if she's a real cop, but she basically meets this Mike guy. I think there might be some chemistry there or something. She acts weird. She like asks him to dance at one point, but at the end of the movie she ends up getting knifed by her dad, and then like Mike like saves her, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna save you, and then in like the hospital she wakes up or something. Maybe she hasn't woken up yet. I don't remember if she wakes up, but I don't know. She goes to the hospital, she lives, she gets in a coma or something, and then at the end of the movie you see like Springtrap, because he got his whole plan foiled, and he's like, oh, I'm still inside the suit, and then Freddy I think like closes the door and he's just locked inside of a like security room, I think, back at Freddy's. The animatronics themselves, if I were to praise the movie, like are super well done. They look really good. I don't know how much of them is real versus CGI, but they look just like they do in the games. In practice, they can see them moving around. They look really nice. You can tell that, when this movie was made, whoever made it put a lot of care into getting those right and making them look good. Now, the first time that you see them move around and like interact with the rest of the characters is when I started to feel like high when I was watching this movie, because basically at one point Mike's babysitter is out of commission, so he has to take his little sister to work. So he takes her there. He falls asleep because he's obsessed with lucid dreaming to try and reevaluate his childhood trauma, and he wakes up to hear her screaming. He goes inside like the main room of the pizzeria, and all the animatronics are like down there like hanging out with her, like chilling, playing with her or whatever, and it's like really uncanny. They're like standing in a circle or whatever. This is where my mind started to break when I'm watching this movie. And there's another scene where they all build like a fort together out of like chairs in the pizzeria, and then they end up like, there's like a music montage where they're like building it and putting it together and having fun, and then at the end they all like lay down in like a circle with like their heads in a circle or whatever, and they're all like, you know, in like a circle pattern type thing. You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm basically illiterate, so I can't speak English. They're laying in like a circle, like looking up at the ceiling, and it's like, oh, we're all friends now. And like, that was a point in the movie when I was like, oh, I feel like I'm high. I feel retarded right now. So definitely, like, it was like an experience watching this movie. It was not what I expected. I honestly thought it would be worse than it was in terms of entertainment value. I thought it would be boring. It's not boring. It's anything but boring. I was definitely like enjoying watching it all the way through, and it's pretty short. I think it's like less than 2 hours long. It might be an hour and 40 minutes, maybe an hour and 45. So it's a pretty like tight watch. There isn't a lot of like filler going on in the movie. Pretty much every scene has a purpose to carry the plot forward, which I do appreciate. Now, there are some genuinely funny scenes in this movie. I don't know whether they're supposed to be funny or if they're supposed to be like creepy and scary, or if I just found them funny, but the entire theater was laughing at the same time as me. There's this scene when basically there's a plot by Mike's babysitter to try and work with his aunts to get his legal guardianship taken away so that his little sister is in, you know, the possession of his aunt, basically, right? And so his babysitter, combined with like these three goons, go to Freddy's Pizzeria, and basically the three goons, they're supposed to trash it, and they get systematically like murdered or whatever by the animatronics. And then this like babysitter, this like just normalized girl, she goes into the building to try to look for them. She can't find them. She hears like a little boy being like, "Hi, come here." So she goes inside, and then he's like, "Warmer, warmer," and she like walks around the pizzeria, and she goes into like this back room where Freddy is there, and then she hears like "warmer" again coming from the animatronic, and she's like confused. So she walks up to it, she looks inside the mouth, and you can see like there's like a little mouth inside the bigger mouth, and then the animatronic suddenly like bites her in half, like just opens its jaw. The little boy's hand like pulls her in, sucks her in, and then like just chomps her in half, and it was like a really comedic death. It was super silly. Another funny moment was when they're at like a diner, and when they were like discussing this plan in the first place, and Matt Pat shows up, and he says something. He's like, "It's just a theory," and then the whole audience is like, "Yeah, Matt Pat, woo, yeah." Another part was Corey X Kenshin was in this movie. I'm not like a big fan of him. I personally wanted to see like Markiplier in it, because I feel like to me Markiplier is like the Five Nights at Freddy's guy. So I feel like he should definitely have been in this movie, but you know, I'm sure Corey X Kenshin has done a bunch of content regarding Five Nights at Freddy's, but regardless of that, I personally would have liked to see, you know, Markiplier in it. But you know, we got Matt Pat. That's a big win in my opinion. He had to be there, right? I wasn't even sure if Scott Cawthon was cool with his theories or not or whatever, but it was good to see that Matt Pat made his way into the movie. Overall, after watching it, like as a movie, does this film entirely work? No. And the reason why is not just because of like the quality of the acting, and some of the acting is pretty corny, but there are also some big like plot inconsistencies, I will say. Like at one point, Freddy, like the animatronic, shows up to Mike's house when he's not there, and like his little sister is there. And the first thing I was wondering was like, how the fuck did this animatronic that's like super slow moving get all the way to the house? And then they end up leaving in like a taxi. But the thing I'm wondering is like, did they take a taxi there, and then like he got there, and then like right when they got outside there was another taxi ready? Like it's basically framed as if the taxi was right there ready to go as Freddy was like murdering this girl's aunt or whatever. And that's also never even resolved. Like 5 people die in this movie, and we just like, there's no resolution there at all. Like there's no police investigation. There's nobody worried about them. There's 4 people that die with a babysitter, right? The babysitter dies, and then her 3 like goons die or whatever inside of Freddy's Pizzeria. No investigation. Nobody's even worried about that. And then Mike's aunt just gets like brutally murdered by Freddy in his house, and like the body is just left there. There's never any explanation for that. Also, was this girl like a real cop? Was she even a real police officer? Was she just like pretending to be a cop so she could be like part of the plot and like, you know, move it forward because she was helping her dad try to kill Mike or whatever, and like get this little girl to be a part of the animatronic family or whatever? Like what is the whole deal there? That was never really explained to me. If she was complicit, why was she never arrested or anything like that? Because she was working with her father to try to, you know, kill people basically. Honestly, like the reveal was kind of obvious as far as like the guy from the beginning of the movie who gave Mike the job being the murderer. Like if you had to guess anyone was the murderer, it would have to be him, right? But it was interesting to find out that guy also was the same guy that killed his sibling way back when and kidnapped him, you know? Once again, to touch on the acting from the main character was genuinely good. The girl was kind of corny. I don't think she did an amazing job, but maybe it was just the script. You don't know. The guy who played William Afton, the Scooby-Doo Shaggy guy, he was okay for what he had to work with. I'm no acting expert. I'm not like a big movie reviewer, but I did find his performance, even with the context of it being a Five Nights at Freddy's movie, like, I feel like it was a little bit, was it tongue-in-cheek? I don't know. How much is this movie supposed to be tongue-in-cheek? I can't entirely tell. Once again, the Matt Pat cameo was keckalicious. I did enjoy that. Overall, like, as someone who's not a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, is this an amazing movie? Like, no, probably not. It's not A24, amazing. Fantastico. Superb. Amazing movie. It was not that, but as someone who, like, enjoyed Five Nights at Freddy's when I was younger, it was an entertaining watch, and, like, what else is the purpose of a movie, right? Other than to be entertaining. I paid my money to watch it. I'm glad I saw it. I don't regret spending the money on it. I don't really want to see the movie again, to be honest. Like, I don't really have a big desire for that. I'm not going to be thinking about it for months to come, unless I, see, like, millions of videos on my recommended about it, in which case I'm forced to think about it. Overall, it's not that surprising to me that critics don't like it that much, because it's, not that amazing of a movie. I was pretty shocked that apparently Cuties has like a higher Rotten Tomato score than this movie. That's crazy. But yeah, like, it was, kind of a dumb, cheesy, corny movie about kind of a dumb, cheesy, corny property. But you know what? I enjoyed watching it, and I think you guys probably all would too. I'd recommend you go see it if you haven't already. Sorry for like spoiling the entire thing, but yeah, go watch it. Bye. And if you liked this video, consider becoming a member. For $5 a month, you get access to exclusive podcasts, unreleased videos, and the members-only Minecraft server. Thanks so much to all of my YouTube members who fund my content.